Hey there, Simon here from AQ Outdoors, just checking in with a first thoughts review on the new aerial whitewater paddle series from Aqua Bound. I was fortunate enough to be a little bit involved in the design process with this, so some of my thoughts may be a little biased, but these are my honest opinions on the paddle after the first use of the final production model. The aerial paddle series comes in two blade sizes, the major, which is the bigger one, and the minor. It also comes in different materials, carbon and glass, and you have different shaft options. They're bent, straight, and you can also get one piece or adjustable. The one here you see is the full carbon bent shaft with the adjustable ferrule option. So far, this is the only final production model that we've received, so I can't comment with any authority on the glass models or the straight shafts or anything. I can only assume they perform very similarly. So first thoughts on the paddle are going to come from myself and a long-time instructor, colleague and friend of mine, Brandon Willms. So one of the positives is it's kind of a quiver killer. Having a paddle with an adjustable ferrule that allows you to change the feather of the blade and the length of the blade solves that problem of, oh, I need a play boating paddle and I need a river running paddle. Brandon likes to creek with a 30-degree offset and he likes to play boat with a 0-degree offset. So you can do that with one paddle here, which is really nice. The other thing is it kind of has a hybrid shaped blade in my opinion. So it's not necessarily fully geared towards creeking, it's not necessarily fully geared towards play boating. So with that in mind, it is very versatile. Combine that with the ferrule and you have something that is really a one paddle does all solution. Also, the fact that you can take it apart makes traveling with it much easier, which is fantastic. Those of you who watch our reviews know we don't get too granular on the materials and the features and all that kind of thing, but one piece that is worth noting is this lamb lock stitching here. So it's basically a Kevlar stitching that holds the blade together and ultimately prevents that wear and chipping that happens in non-foam core paddles. It's kind of like Dynel for a non-foam core paddle, which is going to, I think, obviously we've used this once, I think is going to prevent the shrinkage of the blade over time, and I'm pretty sure that's what Aqua Bound is gunning for with this. So that's a super nice feature. We'll just have to wait and see how that goes. It's definitely not the lightest laminate carbon paddle that you'll get, but the swing weight feels really good. It feels very balanced, and we noticed very little feathering, if any, on paddle strokes from like tip to hip. It was really, really good, and it felt really good in the water. It's quite thin through the blade, so it's funny, it's not a light paddle, but it feels to have an easy pull through the water for what that's worth. The other thing that's really neat about this paddle is that it has this rubberized feel to it, which when it's dry, it's really, really grippy, and it actually felt like it might be a problem, like it might give you blisters and such. However, once it gets wet, it doesn't feel rubbery anymore, it just feels grippy. And so we paddled for a couple of hours with it and there was certainly no issues with pain in the hands or anything like that. So it resolves the need for paddle wax or hockey tape or something to help with the grip on the paddle. Wearing gloves, it's ultra grippy, like almost too much. It was very, very grippy with gloves on. The other thing that's a bit different about this paddle is the indexing. So a lot of these paddles have an oval index where you hold the paddle, and it felt a bit weird in the hand to start with. It's actually triangular, so it nestles really nice in your knuckles, and it does index the paddle very well. A few people who have picked it up have said it feels weird to start with, but ultimately after using it for an hour or so, it felt really natural and really good. So back to the ferrule again. This adjustable model adjusts up to 5 centimeters. So this one's 197 to 202. And that leaves a ton of ferrule inside the paddle here, which would tell me that it's not really going to impact the durability of the paddle. Because that's one of the concerns with extendable paddles, is you weaken it the longer you extend it. But that 5 centimeters is enough to go from creeking to play boating without weakening the structure of that ferrule. It also adjusts from 60 degrees left to 60 degrees right and everywhere in between. So even slalom paddlers who tend to paddle 45 or above could be using this paddle no problem. One thing on the adjustable ferrule that as my aging eyes struggle to see things more and more, the adjustable component where you set the length and the feather is black on black, and it's really hard to see, especially when it's wet. If it was white, it would just be a little bit easier to see. Probably not a problem for young eyes, but I just had a bit of a hard time seeing it. One last thing of note, not a pro, not a con, is just how the bench shaft works. It feels a bit like an H2O paddle to me, more so than a Werner or a Gala Sport or something like that. It feels as though the blade is offset backwards a little bit, which is just a different feeling. I really liked the feel of it, which I was surprised about because I really like the forward offset on the Gala Sport. And I also like the Werner bench shaft too. So it's just something that feels a little bit different than maybe paddles you've tried in the past. So far, with limited use, I don't really have a lot of downsides to this paddle. I think it's going to feel quite foreign and different when you put it in your hands to start with. They're certainly not cheap. They're one of the more expensive paddles on the market now as far as whitewater paddles go. So there is going to be, I think, a barrier to entry there for some people as far as how expensive they are. This is a new category for Aqua Bound, a composite whitewater paddle. So as of yet, the durability of these are unproven. It feels well built, but until they've been used and beaten and abused a bunch, we're not really going to know how they hold up. One other thing in relation to the weight of the paddle is the blades seem to be very, very well built, and they've got this spline in the back to create stiffness and strength, which is quite a lot beefier than a lot of other paddles we see on the market. So I think that contributes to the overall weight, but I believe that's also going to impact the strength of the paddle really positively. One thing people often ask about with carbon paddles and fiberglass paddles is the stiffness of them. I found this to be moderately stiff for a laminate carbon paddle. The joint in the middle certainly impacts the stiffness. The one piece will be stiffer for sure, but the thinness of the blades through here and the build of the shaft and everything does give it a little bit more flex than some of the stiffer carbon paddles, but it felt really nice to me. For those of you looking for an ultra lightweight carbon paddle, this is certainly not your best option on the market at the moment. It does feel a little heavier, but again, the swing weight feels really good and it feels smooth through the water. So that's it. In full transparency, we've paddled with it once. This is aggregated feedback from two people with lots of paddling experience, but there's a lot more time need to be spent to get a real feel for how this performs and how it lasts. But first thoughts is Aqua Bound have done an amazing job of building this paddle. Thanks so much for checking out the video. We hope this review was helpful. If you've got any comments or thoughts or questions, please put them below. And to find out more information, you can check us out at aqoutdoors.com.